So the main contents of the British media, which is part of the main kind of controlling media propaganda, dominate broadcast and print media that is consumed by most of the population of the world, with the exception of China and Russia. The main media operations led by the BBC, Reuters, AFP, and American, well, Dirty Diggers, Fox News, and the Associated Press of America. May be different, but the actual narrative is on the contents, the product of one single unit somewhere which is not identified at all, which controls the actual contents of these big distributors, if you like. So, while they do various aspects of the condemnation of what they call Hamas terror against Israelis, they completely ignored the deaths, many times more numbers of the people that by the earthquake in Afghanistan. So thousands of Afghanis who died as a result of the earthquake within the same time frame, let's say, are not recognized as human beings at all. Just as Australians reinforce their defiant refusal to recognize as human beings the First Nation people that lived in Australia, the arrival from the British colonialists of the white occupiers of Australia 200 years ago. So that don't recognize these First Nation, original nation people whose descendants are among the people pictured weeping and crying and in shock when the referendum result was published in the last 48 hours. So the Australian original people, original nations, are not recognized, nor are the Afghani earthquake victims recognized. The only people who are recognized as human beings really are the people in Israel. Most of them Jewish, but not all of them Jewish, because there were people doing holidays, etc., that got trapped in the attacks. So, as if that was not bad enough, the overall narrative about Netanyahu and his so called unity government preparing to destroy Gaza. And what that has done has included the reduction, as if it was not already reduced, reduction of the United Nations organization to an agency for propaganda of the same colonialist imperialists that sponsored the state of Israel in the name of the Jews, but the Jews are not the real reasons for the state of Israel. Because, as the Sky News has shown, there are Jews who are supporters of the Palestinians and Jews who totally oppose the state of Israel. But this distinction, so crucial and important, this distinction is completely in the actual contents denied by the BBC, by the even the Sky News and the American Associated Press, Fox News, and the French AFP. They say that any attack on the fascistic, genocidist behavior of the state of Israel is the same as an attack on the Jewish people. Such a difference, but they completely deny that difference. And what has happened since the Nazis, Germany, or German Nazis committed the atrocities and the genocide against the people, including the larger number that is not denied, included in the victims being Jewish. There were non Jewish people as well. But the non Jewish people have been completely, if you like, written off from the narrative created by the Zionists, conveniently reducing the Holocaust by the Nazis, German Nazis, to an attack on what they effectively have degenerated into concept of Israel. They don't really mean to oppose the concept of genocide against Jewish people or the people, other people that were targeted by the Holocaust perpetrators. So it has become as if the state of Israel was being created by the Nazis. The Nazis, doing the Holocaust on the Jews, were really contributing to the creation of the state of Israel in a perverse way. The very thing, the very thing that Ken Livingstone was accused of misstating, because the anti-Ken Livingstone actions a few years ago, as contained in the very aggressive, hateful behavior on film, on the footage featuring John Mann, shows John Mann actually is filmed chasing Ken Livingstone on film while he was ranting and abusing, ranting at and abusing Ken Livingstone. But Ken Livingstone had actually said something that the behavior of Netanyahu and his previous predecessor Zionist fronters of the State of Israel machine have effectively said, which is that among the sponsors of the State of Israel, or among the perpetrators of the genocide, the Holocaust in the 1940s, among them, not all of them, among them were Jewish elements, which is fact. And this is so, just like the difference between the Jewish and the Zionist state of Israel, so is the distinction between those small number, very small, admittedly very small number of Jewish elements that collaborated with the Nazis and the ordinary people, Jewish people that were massacred and genocided by the Nazis. This is so sensitive because when the fact of the collaboration by the small number of Jews in Germany or the small number of German Jews with the Nazis was highlighted in a documentary maybe 30 years ago, there was really very angry condemnation of that by the Zionist lobby that actually invaded the space, the main platforms in the British media, the American media. And they said that this was telling the truth about the collusion, the collaboration of by this small number of Jews, German Jews with the Nazis, they said was an anti Semitic attack. Nothing could be further from the truth. It wasn't anti Semitic. In fact, it was pro Jewish people disclosure. Just like the British Prime Minister who gave legitimacy, Balfour, to the idea, the concept of the State of Israel to be foisted on the people and land of Palestine. Balfour is the one that is the big elephant that they don't want to mention in Britain. So, all the appearances of differences, like the differences by name, like Rod Liddell and other named individual columnists and writers, they appear to be different from one another, but the narrative is the same, absolutely same. They are carrying the same kind of narrative, all of them. And they are doing that to hide the difference, which is a deadly difference. Because to confuse the Jewish people with the Zionists is very important for them, the Zionists. They hijack the Jewish people and they want to deny the truth to the Jewish people, about the Jewish people, to the whole world. Because to tell the truth about the Jewish people will deny the Zionists any legitimacy at all. So when that particular documentary, I'll come to that, I'm just checking on that one. So there is this summary on the Holocaust Encyclopedia I'm looking at. On the first part of a thing under key facts, and the main collaboration reads as follows: Axis governments, police, and military authorities aided in the roundup and deportation of Jews to killing centers, actively participated in the murder of Jews, and in several cases committed atrocities against their Jewish fellow citizens within their own national borders. And number two is in territories they occupied, particularly in the east, the Germans depended on indigenous auxiliaries, civilian, military, and police to carry out the annihilation of the Jewish population. And thirdly, the Axis government, authorities, and local authorities in German occupied regions were key in implementing expulsion, deportation for forced labor, and notice this, and mass murder of non Jewish populations. It's a long, detailed documentary entry. And right across Europe, the concentration and the collaboration took place with the Jewish participation. I'm looking for there is a word that is used to describe the collaborators, Jewish collaborators with the Nazis. One of the entries here, eh, the Wikipedia, is headed Jewish collaboration with Nazi Germany. Jewish collaboration with Nazis refers to the activities before and during World War II of a small number of Jewish persons working voluntarily or involuntarily with the anti Semitic regime of Nazi Germany with different motivations. The term and history have remained controversial regarding the exact nature of the collaboration in some cases. In the racist optics of Nazi Germany, Jews occupied the lowest place. They were destined for removal, first through ghettoization and exile, and finally through extermination. Because of that, there is debate as to whether one can speak of Jewish collaboration at all. If one defines collaboration as voluntary cooperation based on an ideological premises, then by definition, Jewish collaboration could not exist. According to Yehuda Bawa, the only Jewish collaborationist group in occupied Europe was the Group 13 that existed in the Warsaw Ghetto, whose collaboration was based on the belief in the inevitability of German victory. According to Bawa, in the case of other Jewish groups, one should speak rather of forced cooperation. Although, as he points out, some groups came close to collaboration. According to Ebony Finkel, defining cooperation in this way is problematic with regard to the activities of some Judenrat leaders and Jewish police who were corrupt and despotic and whose actions were guided primarily by the desire for profit and their own survival. Finkel proposes defining cooperation as activity aimed at the survival of the community and its individual members, while collaboration would be activity to the detriment of the community or the survival of individual Jews. Finkel stresses that cooperation was always open and visible. Collaboration could be public or private, often secret. In most cases, Jews who chose to collaborate did so to guarantee their personal survival, which distinguished them from most other ethnic groups who collaborated with Nazi Germany. The phenomenon of Jewish collaboration was often exploited by the nationalist apologists from groups deeply implicated in the Holocaust, who used it to minimize their own group's role in the extermination of the Jews, and so on. So, I have already discussed this before reading this. So, a very small number of people of Jewish background, let's say, identity, either were forced to collaborate for their own survival, or a smaller, even smaller number than that who actually volunteer to collaborate. But whatever the number, the Zionists today and the Zionist Israel does not want to even mention the existence of any collaboration by any person of Jewish background or identity with the Nazis in Germany. And that is the case when they generalize, any criticism of the collaboration by anyone of Jewish background into an anti Semitic contemporary attack now against all Jewish people, which is absolute untruth. So there was this campaign in I'm going to again look for that particular entry, campaign against the play. The play in London on the Jewish collaborators with Nazis. So the protocols of the elders of is the most notorious and widely distributed anti Semitic publication of modern times. Its lies about Jews, which have been repeatedly discredited, continue to circulate today, especially on the internet. The individuals and groups who have used the protocols are all linked by a common purpose to spread hatred of Jews. Now, there is no mention of the state of Israel or the Zionists, the ordinary people, the Jewish people. The protocols is entirely a work of fiction, intentionally written to blame Jews for a variety of ills. Those who distribute it claim that it documents a Jewish conspiracy to dominate the world. The conspiracy's alleged leaders, the so called elders of Zion, never existed, it says. In 1903, the portions of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion were serialized in a Russian newspaper, Dibena. The version of the Protocols that has endured and has been translated into dozens of languages, however, was first published in Russia in 1905 as an appendix to the Great in the Small. In the Small, the coming of the Antichrist and the rule of Satan on earth by Russian writer and mystic Sergei Nilus. Although the exact origin of the protocols is unknown, its internet was to portray. Sorry, I misread that word. It's not internet. Its intent was to portray Jews as conspirators against the state. In 24 chapters or protocols, allegedly minutes from meetings of the Jewish leaders, the protocols describes the secret plans of Jews to rule the world by manipulating the economy, controlling the media, and fostering religious conflict. Following the Russian Revolution of 1917, anti Bolshevik emigres brought the protocols so that protocols to the West. Soon after, editions circulated across Europe, United States, South America, and Japan. An Arabic translation first appeared in the 1920s. Beginning in 1920, auto magnate Henry Ford's newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, published a series of articles based in part on the protocols. The International Jew, the book that included this series, was translated into at least 16 languages. Both Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels, later head of the propaganda, praised Ford and the International Jew. In 1921, the London Times presented conclusive proof that the protocols was a clumsy plagiarism. The Times confirmed that the protocols had in large part from a French political satire that never mentioned Jews. Maurice Joly's dialogue in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu, 1864. Other investigations revealed that one chapter of a novel, Hermann Goedesh, Goedesh's Baritz, 1868, also inspired the protocols. And on the 17th of August 1921, the Times in London. In 1921, a London Times article provided proof exposing the protocols of the Elders of Zion as fraudulent. The most widely distributed anti Semitic publication of modern times. The protocols falsely purport to be the record of secret meetings of Jewish leaders who were plotting to take over the world. The text has been repeatedly discredited since, but continues to circulate today. That is in the Times. So I'm still. This is just again another kind of set of references. So this is the piece that I have been looking for. This is a entry under the ocular tree files. Partition, a new play which accuses Zionist state Jews. And this is the piece that I remember reading at the time, but this is the piece in the Guardian on the 14th of January 1987. This is the actual image of the page in the Guardian. It says, Rewriting the Holocaust. Partition, a new play which accuses Zionist Jews in Hungary. Okay, it's not in Germany itself, but in Hungary, of collaborating with the Nazi extermination machine, opens at the Royal Court, that is a theatre in London, later this month, that is January 1987. David Rose examines the background to a work which will arouse a strong controversy. So this is the the internet. Partition, yeah. So this partition one that was staged in theatre in London in 1987, and this was condemned by David Rose, who was John Bart's claim that the BBC was on the rocks when he joined the corporation in 1987 have been questioned by the man he succeeded as Director General. Michael Chackland said Lord Bart's assertion that he transformed a patchy and problematic BBC when he arrived 15 years ago was patently untrue because he was not running the organization. In a clear swipe at John Bart's claims in an interview, Michael Chackland pointed out John Bart was merely his deputy, and a team of top executives turned round the corporation's fortunes before John Bart became Director General 5 years later. He lists luminaries such as Bill Cotton, Paul Fox, David Hatch, and John Tusa as the key executives who laid the groundwork for John Bart. The team, fully backed by the Board of Governors, reduced the full time staff of the BBC to its current level of around 25,000. Independent producers became a major creative force in the BBC, television, etc., etc. So this is more like more internal BBC thing that has been disclosed and that has been brought together. So that is partition. Continues. So there is a lot of comment about partition, and there is not any sign anywhere that Fleet Street, the British media, is interested in examining the evidence of the collaboration by the Jewish people, as I have pointed out in the last 5 minutes, in Hungary with the Nazis. But the David Rose piece that I referred to, published in The Guardian, by The Guardian in 1987, was the main published item in Fleet that I recall coming across about the issue of partition, the collaboration by the Jews with the Nazis, either in Hungary or in Germany or anywhere. This is continuing today. The myth that Zionists are the pure form of Jewish faith. This is a myth that the Zionists want to hijack the entire identity of the Jewish population. So, the protest that has been reported by the Sky News by one single Jewish protester in Britain against Israeli attacks on the Palestinians, that is something that want to really investigate. Because if they investigated and came across the truth, which is that most Jewish people are not supporters of Israel, if the truth about Israel's agenda and purpose is made open and made clear to them. And that is what the Zionists are trying to avoid and they want to hide forever from the public and more importantly, from the ordinary Jewish people. So, whenever there is a criticism of the state of Israel, the Zionists jump at the critics, on the critics, and wrongly accuse, intentionally wrongly accuse the legitimate critics of the state of Israel of being anti Semitic, which is a very emotional and emotionally chargeable trigger to mobilize most of the ordinary population into thinking that the bad things that the state of Israel does are the good things because they are about protecting the survival of the ordinary innocent Jewish people, which is nothing to do with the agenda of the state of Israel. Look at the treatment of one protester. For in the last 40 years, the most important critic of the Israeli nuclear program is called this man Vanunu. Vanunu has been and is still being harassed permanently from any freedom, from having any freedom at all, because he is the former nuclear technician, Israeli nuclear technician, who was disclosing the truth about the Israeli nuclear program when he was targeted by a attractive Jewish female who claimed to have fallen in love with him. But this attractive Jewish woman was in fact a Mossad operative from Israel. And over a period of time, she targeted Banunu in London and eventually succeeded in trapping him in a way where he was unable to escape and he was hijacked by Israeli operatives, agents, and he was subjected to various acts that totally destroyed his freedom and that took him to Israel, where he has been condemned for the rest of his life. That is what the state of Israel does. And that is what the British media, the American media, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, Joe Biden, and all the supporters of Zionism and the Zionist state of Israel, they want to promote all of this as being in the best interest to protect the Jewish people, which is absolute lie. We shall be continuing on all of these and updating in due course, of course. The Jewish Chronicle published a piece or dated So we shall be ending this particular part 56 minutes and we shall continue in the next